The courtroom was heavy with silence, until a Navy SEAL locked eyes with the woman no one else noticed. It was late morning inside the tribunal chamber, sunlight struggling through tall windows, glinting off metals and brass buttons. The hum of air vents filled the stillness, broken only by the shuffling of papers and the scrape of a chair. At the long table sat the prosecutor, Major Paul Kessler, rigid in posture and clipped in tone. The presiding officer, Colonel Marcus Doyle, tapped his gavel once, setting order. She was there, 3 rows back. Commander Sarah Hale, known once as Ironclad. Civilian clothes, dark jacket, hair pulled into a severe knot. Her back was straight, eyes fixed ahead, hands folded neatly in her lap. She hadn't spoken a word since entering the room. To most, she was another observer, unnoticed in the blur of uniforms. To the man now called to the stand, she was everything. Chief Petty Officer Jack Rivers, call sign Riptide, stepped forward. 36, his frame broad but stiff from old wounds, a faint scar tracing his temple. He stood at attention before being sworn, the oath rolling off his tongue with practiced ease. His gaze swept the room once, then settled on her. For an instant his jaw tightened, breath caught. The questioning began. Kessler pressed him, voice sharp. "Chief Rivers, describe the events of the extraction operation 4 years ago." Rivers cleared his throat, tone steady. "We were Oscar Mike before dawn. Team of 6. Insertion point at the base of a ridgeline. Target zone, 1.2 kilometers to the east. Objective was compromised before we reached it." The courtroom leaned forward. His words carried weight, detail etched with memory. Overwatch in position by 0330. Riptide leading hammer on point. Contact came fast, small arms, RPGs from the northern slope. We returned fire, suppressed M4s, MK-48 on the flank, extraction window closing. The image took hold. Mountains dark under a sliver of moon, boots crunching shale, radios spitting clipped commands. "Break, break, this is Riptide, contact north, Oscar Mike, keep moving." The narrative pulled the tribunal into another place, another time. Through his voice, the desert air was sharp, the ridgeline a knife edge. The memory carried the sound of rotor blades faint in the distance, a promise of escape slipping away. He paused, eyes flicking again toward Hale. She sat motionless, a figure carved from stone. Her silence was louder than any words. Kessler interrupted, frustration sharpening his tone. "Chief, you've described your own actions. Who issued the orders that night?" Rivers' hands tightened on the wooden rail of the stand. His chest rose once, deliberate. "Orders came from Ironclad. Calm, precise, no hesitation." The room shifted uneasily. A murmur passed along the gallery. The prosecutor narrowed his eyes. "Ironclad. That call sign is not on record." Rivers' gaze didn't move from her. His voice dropped, carrying more weight for being quiet. "Ironclad was our CO." A silence fell so complete the ticking of a clock could be heard. All eyes turned, following his to the woman seated at the back. Hale didn't flinch. She neither confirmed nor denied, her face unreadable. Colonel Doyle's brow furrowed. "Chief Rivers, are you identifying that civilian as your commanding officer during a combat operation?" The moment hung suspended. Rivers inhaled once, the scar at his temple catching the light. Then, with a soldier's certainty, he broke the stillness. He pointed straight at her. "Yes, sir, she's my CO." The words detonated in the chamber. Chairs shifted, whispers erupted, gavel striking for silence. Hale remained still, hands folded, her composure unbroken. Shock rippled through the room, uniformed men and women glancing between records that said one thing and the living testimony that said another. The prosecution stiffened, lips pressed tight. The judge leaned back, weighing the revelation, and through it all, she sat silent. Ironclad, unyielding, offering nothing. For For the first time, the truth had broken the surface and the courtroom could not unhear it. But if Rivers' claim was true, then the official story was a lie, and the buried mission was about to be unearthed. Rivers' voice dropped, but the weight of his words pulled everyone into the mountains with him. He leaned into the stand, eyes steady, posture squared as though still under fire. The courtroom air felt thinner now, heavy with what he was about to unveil. Every phrase he spoke dragged the listeners farther from the polished wood of the tribunal and closer to a canyon rim where dawn bled gray across the horizon. "It was 0300 when we stepped off," he began. "Moonlight low, ridge at our 12, wind cutting east to west. Team of 6, weapons checked, mags topped off. I had Hammer on point, Falcon on comms, myself carrying overwatch logs. Hale, ironclad, was in command." A few heads turned toward Hale's silent figure in the gallery. She remained unmoving, as if carved from the same stone as the canyon walls he described. Rivers pressed on. "Insertion clean. We moved 2 clicks up a dry wash, rocks loose under our boots. Overwatch called in, overwatch in position. We were inside the window. 2 hour minus 15. The scene unfolded with precision. The tribunal became a staging ground in their minds, every detail sharp. The jagged canyon stretched 300 meters across. The kill zone was marked by a dry riverbed, open ground no man wanted to cross. Rivers' voice hardened. "We crossed the mouth. Then it hit. First RPG came out of the northern slope. Whistle, then fire on the ridge. MK-48 opened up. Suppressed M4s pushing them back. We were pinned. Extraction zone still 1.2 clicks east. The gallery sat frozen. They heard the radio crackle in his tone, felt the chaos. Break, Riptide. Contact north. Oscar. Mike, push through." He drew a breath. "We fell back to a trench 50 meters behind cover. That's when Ironclad took control. She was calm, sharp. Directed fire left, shifted Hammer to breach the ridge wall. Without her, we'd have bled out in that riverbed." The prosecutor cut in. "Objection. Commander Hale is not listed in any capacity beyond logistical support for this mission." Rivers snapped his eyes toward him, jaw clenched. "With respect, sir, the paper doesn't reflect what happened on the ground. She commanded that fight." The tension swelled. Colonel Doyle gestured for him to continue. Rivers did not falter. "Falcon relayed comms. Ironclad moved us by sectors, 30 meters at a time. MK-48 laying suppression, Hammer clearing obstacles with shaped charges. She called the shifts down to the second. When Hammer's charge misfired, Ironclad went forward herself, rewired it under fire. That breach bought us the corridor to move." Gasps rippled, stifled behind hands. Hale still sat motionless, eyes forward. "Ortega," Doyle said, voice firm. "Petty Officer Ortega, step forward." Luis Ortega, call sign Hammer, rose reluctantly from the bench. Shoulders broad, hands scarred. He walked with the heaviness of a man dragged back into fire. He stood beside Rivers, gaze flicking once toward Hale before fixing on the judge. "Is this testimony accurate?" Doyle asked. Ortega's throat worked. For a long beat, silence. Then, "Yes, sir," Ironclad commanded. "She saved us all." Kessler stood, voice sharp. "Objection, again. No record, no log, no CO assignment. She was never there in that role. The testimony is hearsay, unsupported." Rivers' hands curled into fists. Ortega's eyes narrowed, anger simmering. The truth of their loyalty was colliding with the weight of institutional denial. Doyle raised an eyebrow. "Major, your records are being directly contradicted by sworn testimony from 2 operators on the ground. You'd better have clarity to provide." The prosecutor stiffened. He held up a folder. "According to mission logs, Commander Hale was listed as support staff. Logistics. Nothing more. That is what the official record states." The words cut through the chamber. Rivers blinked, stunned. Ortega swore under his breath. The revelation flipped the stakes. This was no longer a question of memory versus fact, but of truth buried under deliberate omission. Rivers' voice cracked, but did not break. "With respect, sir, the record is wrong. You can strip her name from a file, but you can't erase what she did. We were there. She led." The courtroom was divided. Uniforms shifting, eyes darting, whispers echoing. Doubt now hung in the air like smoke, curling through the ranks of listeners. Hale never moved. She bore the firestorm without word, as if the silence itself was her shield. What had begun as testimony had become a fracture line, splitting loyalty from bureaucracy, memory from paper, men's voices from the machinery of record. And the deeper they dug, the clearer it became that someone wanted Ironclad's command to stay buried. But the silence around her was only growing louder, and it would reach its breaking point in the next session. By the third day, the silence around her was louder than any gavel. The tribunal chamber felt colder, the wood-paneled walls heavier, as if time itself pressed down on everyone inside. Colonel Doyle sat like stone at the bench, the prosecutor poised with sharpened papers, and in the corner, Commander Hale remained motionless, hands folded, eyes forward. She hadn't spoken once, not a word in her defense. It was Lieutenant Cross who broke the tension. Her boots sounded hesitant as she stepped to the stand, her gaze darting to Hale as if asking permission she would never receive. When she spoke, her voice was subdued, nearly lost in the cavernous hall. She carried a tablet, its glass glinting under the harsh lights. The screen flickered with mission logs, timestamps, call signs, encrypted fragments that only those who had been there would recognize. She scrolled, paused, and forced the words out. "Ironclad gave the orders that night. I logged them myself." The prosecutor leaned forward, quick to pounce. "Lieutenant, are you suggesting that Commander Hale, who was officially recorded as support staff, acted as commanding officer in a live-fire mission without authorization?" His tone dripped with skepticism. His words carried accusation, but also something sharper, the certainty that bureaucracy would shield him. Cross faltered, shoulders tightening. "I'm saying she was in command. The men followed her. Without her, we would not have made it out." The prosecutor struck back, dismissive. "Convenient, isn't it? Memory is malleable under fire. Yet the records, the official records, list her as support. Nothing more." For a moment it seemed the words would erase Cross's testimony. The courtroom air thickened, a tide pulling against the truth. Then, in the gallery, movement cut through the stillness. Rivers rose first. His uniform creaked, his jaw set hard. He didn't wait for permission. He stood tall, voice unshaken. "With respect, sir, she was my CO." The panel shifted uneasily. Protocol demanded he remain seated. Protocol demanded silence. But Rivers had broken those demands once already, and he would do it again. Ortega followed, slower but just as deliberate. He pushed back his chair, the scrape ringing out like defiance. His voice carried across the chamber, echoing with the weight of memory. "Hammer confirms it. Every order in that canyon came from Ironclad. She held the line when we were breaking. She called the fallback trench. She bought us those minutes." The judge's gavel struck once, sharp. Order was demanded, but the current had shifted. The walls of bureaucracy trembled against the raw presence of men who had lived and bled by Hale's hand. Doyle's eyes narrowed. He looked down at the logs Cross had provided, their digital stamps showing 0200 hours, 031 0430, extraction window closing. He read the last comms entry aloud, voice steady. "Ironclad, you're still with us. Copy." His gaze lifted to Hale. She did not nod. She did not flinch. She simply sat, silent as she had since the first day, the weight of the moment passing over her like a tide she would never try to resist. The prosecutor tried once more, voice sharp, but weaker now. "Your Honor, these displays of loyalty, however touching, do not rewrite official designation." Doyle's reply came after a long pause. "No, they do not. Official records will stand. He let the words hang, heavy as stone, before continuing. But records are not the whole of truth. What I have heard in this chamber tells me sacrifice is not always written into paper. Sometimes it is written into men. The room stilled. The gavel lowered again, but this time with less finality, more gravity. The tribunal would not grant Hale medals or titles. The machine of bureaucracy would grind forward unchanged. Yet something deeper, something unrecorded, was about to be set in stone. One by one, the seals rose. No order had been given, no command spoken. Rivers, Ortega, then Cross, then others who had remained silent until now. Their right hands came up, sharp and deliberate. A salute held for 3 long counts. A salute not to the tribunal, not to the bench, but to the woman who had never spoken in her own defense. Hale did not return it. She simply lowered her gaze, the faintest tightening in her jaw betraying the weight of it all. Dignity, unbroken. Silence, unshaken. She did not need to answer. The men she had led had spoken for her. The gavel's final strike fell into the quiet, but the silence no longer felt oppressive. It felt earned. It felt like recognition, even if the records would deny it. And as the tribunal closed, that silence lingered, a reminder that not all heroes wear the titles the world allows them. The story was not over, because silence had become her legacy, and the men who followed her would not let it be forgotten.